Hello and welcome to Press TV's news analysis coming to you from Tehran. I'm Marzia Hashimi. Thanks so much for being with us. By all means necessary, once a famous phrase used by Malcolm X, but now the quote being used by British Prime Minister David Cameron. This is how he has described the way his government would deal with those who took to the streets in demonstrations which turned into unrest. After 3,000 arrests, Cameron has now brought in a former American police officer to the dismay of British police to lead the battle against what the government deems as troublemakers in the UK.
British police officers are angry with Prime Minister David Cameron's decision to reach across the Atlantic to ask a former US police officer, William Bratton, to help crush the unprecedented unrest in the country. Bratton is known for his zero-tolerance policing approach. The former New York Police Commissioner successfully crushed the 1992 New York protests. He believes the people must fear the police. He says the British protesters have been emboldened by what he calls the soft police response. UK police officials have criticized the so-called zero-tolerance policing.
American police in a different way to we do over here. Here we police by consent. That consent has been shown in swathes in recent days with the support we've had from members of the public. America police by force. We don't want to do that in this country.
Meanwhile, President of the Association of Chief Police Officers, Hugh Ord, has slammed Cameron's decision. He says levels of violence in the United States and Britain are different. Ord has also questioned Bratton's abilities, saying there are still 400 gangs in New York. British police call Cameron's decision a slap in the face.
Now to be given this slap in the face by the Prime Minister and told that he wants to bring in Bill Bratton to cure all policing ills. The ills in this police service at the moment centre purely around a lack of funding.
British lawmakers also argue that employing a former American police officer would demoralise the British police.
But it would absolutely demoralise the Met from top to bottom. And they don't deserve that. Ordinary officers have worked really hard during these disturbances.
British police have arrested more than 3,000 protesters in the aftermath of the unrest that was sparked by the police killing of a black man in London's deprived Tottenham district. Several people, including 3 Muslim, have been killed in the violence. Police are patrolling the streets of London amid fears of a return of unrest. They are to patrol the streets until further notice. But experts say the unrest has its roots deep in underlying social problems that can't be resolved through force.
Well, I'd like to welcome my guest to the program from London, film and documentary maker and son of Malcolm Black Panthers, Mr. Sukant Chandan. And from Atlanta, Georgia, author and human rights activist, Mr. Frederick Alexander Mead. And from Chicago, writer and radio host, Mr. Stephen Lindman. Welcome all of you to the program. Well, I'd like to start it off in London with Mr. Chandan. So how do you see all of this? I mean, why would Cameron actually have to appoint an American to help with this situation that's taking place in the UK?
I think this, good evening, sister, by the way.
Good evening.
And good to be here, as ever. I think this points to the complete cluelessness of our government in dealing with this situation. All the sensible and obvious things that they should be doing, they cannot do. Because, as I said during the student protests, the genie is out of the bottle in the sense that protesting rigorously and militantly has become popular culture amongst our youth. From before, which was popular culture, which was quite inane and apolitical. So really it points to they're lost. And all they can come up with is more cuts, is more exploitation, and is more repression. But as I've said in previous television appearances, that the model which they are going to find in pursuing this more aggressive approach socially and in terms of policing is the model that we had for the last 30, 40 years in Northern Ireland. They want to introduce plastic bullets to the police and water cannon. We know what plastic bullets did in Northern Ireland to the nationalist community. It killed members of their community, including young people. And I've warned before, this is Cameron's social 9/11. If he wants to pull back, and he should pull back from this very disturbing developments, he needs to think carefully. Does he think that young people are not in their homes and handling their weapons, which have been flooding working class and black communities for the last 2 decades under the watch of the Labour government? Does he think that young people aren't thinking, if the police are shooting at us, we might shoot back at the police? Do we want to be in a situation like that civil war that happened in Northern Ireland during the Troubles? And white working class people and other working class people in Britain need to seriously ask themselves this question. In the crisis, the debate is becoming more honest, and the historian David Starkey caused a lot of furor about equating the disturbances to black culture. But I welcome his words, not because he's a racist, he is a racist, but because his views reflects a lot of people's views in relation to the rights and the black community. And there's grains of truth in what he says as well, inasmuch that black culture, West Indian culture, has always been a resistant culture, has always been a culture that's oppressed and sees itself separate from the white power structure in Britain and across the West. So things are becoming a lot more interesting, a lot more honest. But in this period of crisis, we need some honest debate, and working class people need to come together and foil the divide and rule tactics which are all around the media at the moment. Okay. We cannot continue the criminalization of our young people that we've been doing for the last 2 decades and calling them hoodies and chavs and slapping ASBOs on them. This cannot be the only answer. We need other answers, community-based answers coming from the resistant, oppressed communities to deal with these things.
Okay, well, we'll get back to the things that you may feel that is needed for the young people. But let me turn to Atlanta and get Mr. Mead in on this. Now, there's some criticism, as Cameron has brought in American Bill Bratton, that the Americans have a lot more aggressive way of dealing with things as far as the police in the United States, and that some people are criticizing this move and saying that perhaps Cameron wants this type of aggressiveness actually to be implemented now by him. That's why he has brought him in. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the Prime Minister is operating in a function of intellectual bankruptcy. If he believes that bringing a violent approach to the problems that plague London will bring about a positive effect, he's wrong. Violence begets violence. If you introduce a violent approach with respect to how the police deal with the community, then you're going to encounter a violent response. It has not worked in the United States, and it will not work in England. What needs to happen is the Prime Minister needs to address the systemic causes or the problems that cause the behavior in the first place. A disenfranchised population, it does not take much to inspire their anger, their angst in the face of injustice. Mark Duggan being executed by the police was all that it took to stoke the flames of animosity that were already lit. So if the Prime Minister believes that in dealing with this problem, in dealing with the threat of a potential riot, one that would occur in the future, if he thinks that bringing violence to the situation or introducing an approach that is more aggressive will work, he's absolutely wrong. It has not worked in the United States. It will not work in England. Again, the answer is to address the systemic causes of the problem. High unemployment, failing schools, young people feeling disenfranchised, feeling hopeless. Once you start to address the causes of that kind of feeling, then you can start to solve the problems and you won't have to deal with a riot in the first place.
Well, how do you see it, Mr. Lindman? Now, he has brought, or he wants to bring in American Bill Bratton, but as our previous guest has just said, I mean, it's not as if the United States has been very successful itself in dealing with this. So what is exactly going on here in your perspective?
Well, I wrote about it a couple of days ago, and I wrote an article that was titled British Street Riots, Perhaps More Going On Than Meets the Eye. I can't prove it. I don't have smoking gun evidence, but I've seen the same pattern before. In America, we saw it in Norway, We see it in other countries. I think Cameron got exactly what he wanted. The killing of a young black man happens all too often in America. It happens in other Western countries. They don't usually incite street riots, buildings burning, extreme violence, shootings. But the killing of Mark Duggan did. I think this was a state-provoked incident. It wasn't just the police killing a young black man. I think this was Cameron's incident.
What do you mean by that? Why did he want that to happen?
Let me explain. Cameron, like Obama, is a political tool of what my friend and my radio guest today on my program calls the money sequencing power. What's going on is we have terrible social deprivation going on in a global Main Street depression. There is real human suffering, unemployment, growing poverty, hunger, homelessness. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And instead of dealing with this, the prescription across Europe, in America, is austerity. It's like throwing fuel on a fire to make it blaze higher. The great fear in America, in the UK, and across Europe is there really may be a social eruption. What this shooting was about, in my estimation, was to separate blacks from whites, to incite race riots, to separate groups that, if they come together, can be a powerful force for social justice. There's more going on as well. It's to distract people from their economic misery. It's to scare them. It's to test, command, and control systems for greater strife they expect to break out ahead. Why? Because the programs they're enacting, the austerity, will make today's dire conditions much worse. People will react. What Gerald Celente says, the trends watcher, when people lose everything and have nothing else to lose, they lose it. They will lose it. You need to cut it off before it happens and ask the key question, key bono. Who wins? Who loses? The state wins by putting this down, by being able to suck maximum wealth to the money sequencing power that runs these countries. Doing it means taking it from ordinary people, working class people, poor people, make them suffer more, encouraging rage. You need a plan to put it down. This was a test case. This was to test the system at a low level, a few days of riots, to see how you need to counteract them for when the greater ones will come, and they will come, and they could be horrific, and they want to be ready for them. So the idea of bringing a Bratton over, it doesn't matter if you anger the London police. Bratton is like a lot of U.S. cops, including in Chicago where I live. They're brutes. They're brutes. They don't give a damn about ordinary people. They just assume club them to death, shoot them to death. This is what they're planning in the UK. This is what they're planning across Europe. This is the response they want to have ready to put down social protests, and they will be ready, and they will do it, and there will be protests, and there will be bloodshed.
How do you see it, Mr. Chandan? It seems that we have at least 3,000 people that have been arrested already. It seems it's very aggressive the way that the UK police have been entering the homes and arresting people. Does it not seem odd the way that they have come down hard on these people and just arresting them? My question really, I know that you do not represent the UK police, would be why can't they serve a warrant, knock on the door, and bring those people out, not understanding why they are destroying their doors and just invading their privacy and pulling these people out like animals.
This is actually the honest response. The gloves are off. It's a Tory government. It's a government that has nothing but, that despises the poor, that is taking away incapacity benefit from the poor, which is implementing these cuts and bailing out the banks. I mean, it's interesting what Stephen has said about this. Now, I don't think they actually need these riots to divide people. People are divided already in England. And it was 10 years ago during the riots in Oldham, Bradford and Burnley, which showed everyone where the actual cleavages are between the communities. So this has been developing for a while and through the whole quote-unquote war on terror period. So I don't think they needed this. But of course the police are using this and the authorities are using this as a test case. In that Stephen is right. But I think where Stephen, where his analysis I think is not holistic enough, is we need to analyze the psychology and the social life experience of this generation of young people. This generation of young people express themselves so much about the problems they're going through years before this riot in their music and their cultural genre called grime, which came about at the end of the 90s, and it's artists like Wiley and Dizzy Rascal and Get and Giggs, who are all being criminalized, by the way. This culture has been largely criminalized in the last decade as well. They've been talking about the deteriorating state of sexual health, the deteriorating state of their community socially, the violence that's emerged, the way that popular culture, which has been pushed upon these young people, has impacted them. So really, like hip-hop was, as Chuck D from Public Enemy said, that's the black CNN. Grime culture has been talking to us about the problem of young people, and we have ignored them, including the so-called left wing in England, who have done nothing for our young people. And I see them come on Press TV, and I see them come on channels, but they're part of the problem. We haven't provided our young people any social alternative to express their demands and their interests. We haven't provided an alternative, any effective alternative. So why are we surprised now that after years and years and years of young people warning us, they finally exploded? And how they've exploded, and this is where I think I'd like to just contradict Stephen just a little bit. These young people have actually united. It hasn't been just black communities, although the black communities have been the most assertive and militant because of they're the most oppressed in this country. But it's been actually white working class youth, and we've seen images and TV footage of white working class estates fighting the police during these riots. So some would argue it's much better that young working class people are uniting against the police and against big business than fighting each other and letting out these social problems on each other. So I think it's these kind of things that we have to really address. So I would like to say to people, why weren't you listening to Tupac Shakur? He was saying this in the mid and late 90s very clearly about the state of social alienation, and Tupac was the son of a Black Panther. Now, I honestly think that we have gone beyond the realms of reform, although we should be demanding reformist demands. I think the whole system, the whole Western economic political system is defunct, is crumbling. Scotland want independence. They want to jump ship from the United Kingdom. And it's clear that those working class people and white working class people, I really like to address them. Who has decimated the country? Who has looted the country? Your work, your businesses, your mining industry, your steel industry was decimated by the powers that be and the Tory government.
Okay,
and
let me get Mr. Mead back in on this.
Muslims who created this situation. So I think people have to step back and look at the big picture, as I keep saying.
Okay, let me turn to Atlanta and get Mr. Mead back in on this. Now, Mr. Mead, UK Chancellor George Osborne has said that the government will continue to press ahead with budget cuts, including decreasing the number of police, and added that, quote, throwing money at deep-seated social issues is not the answer. Your take on this comment?
Well, no, this is false. Such a move would only exacerbate the existing problem. If you want to see a just society, a civil society, you have to direct resources to populations that are suffering. A disenfranchised population will not stay oppressed forever. The longer you disenfranchise a population, the more angst builds within that community. Ultimately, it will spill over. So any cuts to any resources that would go to these suffering populations will only increase the likelihood that such a violent reaction will occur in the future. Limiting police presence in these communities to some extent will be problematic, even though their presence right now is a problem. What needs to happen is there needs to be a progressive movement to the extent that law enforcement officials meet with community leaders and they form relationships and build trusts. A trust needs to exist between these communities and law enforcement officials. On the federal level, there does not need to be a decrease in the resources going to these populations. That's what created the problem in the first place. What caused this riot was not necessarily the murder of an innocent man. It could have been any number of things that could have caused it. What really caused this problem was the fact that you have large portions of disenfranchised people who are no longer going to be oppressed. The youth have the energy. They have simply said, enough, we are going to take on our liberation. The murder of Mark Duggan simply allowed them to express something they were already feeling. So the federal government needs to honor and respect their condition, direct resources to help these people create job employment, opportunities, so that they might feel that they have futures rooted in hope. That is the answer. Address the suffering. You will reduce any potential violence.
All right, Mr. Lindman, only 40 seconds here. How likely is everything to spill over in the UK? It seems semi-quiet right now. Is it likely to blow?
Oh, absolutely. Sooner or later, it will blow. The point. If poor whites and blacks are protesting together, that makes my point. Cameron wants to disunite them, to split them. But Cameron and the money sequencing power structure of the UK and other countries are too smart by half. They will outsmart themselves. They can cut and cut and cut. They can oppress and oppress and oppress, and people eventually will explode. These are the seeds of revolution. And if these issues aren't addressed responsibly, then Britain, then America, then other European countries, sooner or later, will explode in revolution, and they will throw these people out of power, which they should. And my feeling is, what are they waiting for?
Okay, and on that note, I'd like to thank all my guests for this program. From London, film and documentary maker Mr. Sukant Chandan. From Atlanta, Georgia, Frederick Alexander Mead, author and human rights activist. And from Chicago, writer and radio host Mr. Stephen Lindman. Thank you all for being with us. And as always, viewers, we appreciate you being with us. Join us same time, same place tomorrow for another look at one of tomorrow's top headline stories. Well, I'm Marzieh Hashemi signing out for myself and all the crew right here in Tehran. Thank you so much and goodbye.